Let's use this for now. And then as we figure this out, that'll be good. Yeah, so I also really enjoyed my time at Youthquake. We just talked about that. It was a great experience for our students as far as having a great, unique experience together. It was also a great way for them to have some really good practical steps as far as next steps for their own spiritual journey. It was a really incredible thing for them. But for me, it's also a weekend personally where I feel like I'm coming home. I've been part of Youthquake every year since 2012. It's like the last 8 years, and every year I've been involved. I've been part of running the event in some way. This is the first time I've just shown up just as like an attender. It was a bit of a different experience, but every year since I've come back, since graduating college, it's been a time where it's been a really great time to just reconnect with some friends here. Is this working? Okay. Just had to try, right? Some of them now, these friends, some of them work for the school now. Some of them were there to lead sessions or to be leading concerts for that weekend. A lot of them were also there with their own groups like I was. It honestly, this last weekend felt like I couldn't go anywhere without running into somebody I wanted to talk to. And my family's all very used to this already. Like when I went home for Christmas, there was a moment where the church we usually go to wasn't running a service for one Sunday, so we went to another church in Edmonton and visited there for a little while. And there were 3 instances where I bumped into somebody I wanted to talk to. My parents just kept walking. They just ignored it. They're like, he'll find us later. It's whatever. I just love, that's just kind of who I am. I love making connections with people. My brother, my dad, and I have what I guess you call a tradition, where every Boxing Day, we would go to West Edmonton Mall for Boxing Day shopping, which sounds like the worst thing in the world, but we love it. It's days like those on Boxing Day where I realize how different my brother and I are. Like my brother, he'll go online the night before. He'll like have a whole plan as far as how to get through it and get through it as like effectively and as quickly as possible. Me, unsurprisingly, have zero plan going in. I'm packed in this mall, like I can't take a step in any direction without bumping into somebody, and all I can think of is, look how many people there are to talk to. You know, like that's my attitude with these kind of things. And that's how I've been for most of my life. I probably not like a lot of you, but I really enjoyed my experience in high school. I didn't peak in high school. I wouldn't go back, but like, sure, that's a joke, sure. And it's not, but I have some friends. A lot of those friends are still some of my best friends today. College was no different. I lived on a hall with 32 other guys, which sounds as disgusting as it is. And it was, if I ever wanted some company, it was like concerningly easy for me to distract them from their homework. We'd like play video games or pull pranks on each other or something like that. There was one point where one of my friends was like, we should go talk to girls. We're like, no, we're not gonna do that. That's not what we're gonna do. But I'm a highly relational person. I'm at my best personally when I'm with people. Specifically, I'm at my best when I'm with people that I consider to be my friends. But I graduated from college and I got my first church job and it was awesome, but I realized that there was a change in how my social life, how it functioned. Mainly that like a lot of us, I noticed that when I got into a normal adult life, which I haven't experienced a ton of, but it's actually really difficult to maintain and keep really good, solid friendships. Like since I was like a teenager, I never really had to try to make friends. It was something that just kind of happened for me, and I assumed just like everywhere else in my life, that'd be how it would work. But I got into this job, and it was actually more difficult for me to actually have these meaningful relationships. And because I didn't have a lot of friends with me, I didn't feel like myself. I was at this place, and between 3 services, there'd be 1,500 to 2,000 people come through our doors, and I would walk into the service, and I'd sit in the back, and I would just freeze, and I'd have this huge anxiety attack because out of all these people, I didn't know who or where I could sit. Eventually, I moved out here, and I was fortunate. I arrived the week before Corn and Apple, so I got like that whole extroverted part of me fed really quick. And I learned from my past mistakes. I came in August with a goal that I was going to have a great friend group around here. That was going to be my goal. A few weeks in, someone from the community, they don't attend here, but they invited me out for lunch, and I was kind of talking about this kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, it's really important that I have good friends out here. And he went, I've been here for 5 years. The only friends that I have, my wife and my baby. Which I have neither of, so I wasn't sure what. Thankfully, fortunately, that has not been my experience being here so far. But this isn't just a me problem. In fact, this has been a problem since humans existed. Most of us are familiar with the first chapter in Genesis. We see God create and give meaning to his creation. He calls it good, and at the end, he makes humans. He looks over everything he's created and calls it very good. Then Genesis 2 comes around, and in verse 18, it says that God said it is not good for man to be alone. God gave man every kind of animal and bird as a helper, but none fit the bill just right, and it wasn't until God gave man a companion that it finally fit. The first problem with humanity, it wasn't some apple that we ate, it was isolation. We didn't have someone to share cookies with. In a survey done last year in America, only 50% of pastors said they had someone besides their spouse who they consider to be a best friend. It's not just limited to pastors. CBC reported a couple years ago that 1 in 5 Canadians would identify as some kind of lonely. In the UK, they brought in a loneliness minister in their government. So the government has recognized that people in the UK have a hard time connecting with people, and so they are starting to offer services and programs to help people make friends. There's a website called rentafriend.com where you can, when you go home, go on, and there's people in Winkler and Morden who for $10 an hour will do whatever you want with them. It's not a joke, but thank you. Like, all of us have seen, let's go to the next slide. All of us have seen this text before. Let's hang out soon. And then it happens and you say, yeah, we should meet up, and you both agree, but you don't make any plans. And then a few weeks go by and nothing happens. So it's like, okay, and then we actually try to make a plan to make it happen. And then the night it's supposed to actually hang out, you're just like, oh, I don't want to do anything. And it's like, you make some garbage excuse why you can't do it, and then you try to reschedule, but the day you want to reschedule for, they have the most random thing going on, like a dog show or something like that. And it seems like every evening that you're free, they're busy, or every evening they're free, that you have something going on. And eventually you just have to shrug and be like, I guess we'll see each other in heaven, I guess. I don't know. Like, at some point we've all taken stock at the state of our relationships and thought, this could be even with our own family, and thought that I could be probably doing this a little bit better. When we think about people in our lives, we often come visually out with a circle of friends. This is going to be hard to do with one hand, but we'll try it. They didn't hire me for my artistic ability. So you often have like a circle of friends. So like there's me in the middle. That's my name. That's how you spell it. And then you have like another circle. That would be like your close friends. And so like we'll just give a random name. Like let's put Davis Lepke. That's a random name I don't know about. So like there's someone who'd be a close friend, and then you have like another circle of friends who would also be like maybe not as close to you, but would still relational, be pretty close. And you have people more on the outside. We'll give another random name. Let's just go Warren Neufeld. Let's just have that name. We'll just have him right there. And we have that kind of level as far as our friendships and how we work. But Drew Hunter, he wrote the book Made for Friendship. It inspired a lot of what I'm talking about this morning. He defined it more, and what may be a more helpful thing is kind of like a road. So it's like a 4-lane road. Again, we'll try this. That's part of a road. So it's like a 4-lane. That's roads, right? Okay. And he defines it as like friendship's kind of like a highway, and we're in the far left lane. So here's my Graham Mobile. That's square. And I'm in the far left lane. And so we have people who maybe are like, people we know but aren't really that close with. They could be in this lane, and there could be a lot of them because we know a lot of people, and that's there. And then these middle 2 lanes could be like closer friends or people we have actual relationship with. They can be in there. There aren't as many because we don't have the capacity for that many friendships. And then we have maybe a few people in our left lane with us, and maybe even a few in our car with us. That's kind of a good idea of how friends could go. And it could be, and this is really fluid, a friend who's in the far right lane could get closer here, or friends can kind of drift out and be right here. Some friends can take like a hard exit out and end up in like an exit somewhere, and they just never see them again, and they kind of drift back in later on in life. That can be kind of how friendship works. I like the way it's a lot more fluid that way. But in the past few years, I've struggled with making meaningful friendship. I've really struggled, honestly, as much of a relational guy that I am, I've really struggled with having people in this left lane for me personally. Either they lacked depth, or neither of us were available to each other as much, or they felt they're like really forced. I felt like in order for me to figure out how to make good friendships and get them to last, I needed to form, as pretentious as this sounds, I needed to form a theology of friendship. And so we're going to look biblically what good and bad friendships look like. And we're not going to get through every detail because friendships, like, it's not a science, it's an art where there's like a whole lot of case-by-case basis kind of thing. But we're going to get through a few things here. So as I started to look, I found some excellent examples of friendship in the Bible. There's the most classic example is David and Jonathan. I think probably a lot of us are familiar with it, where one protected the other from a father who wanted to kill him, and eventually they made this very formal covenant of their friendship. There's also Ruth, who was really close with her mother-in-law, Naomi, that she abandoned her own home to be with her. It says in Ruth 1, it says, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us." Coming on a little strong, but Ruth was aggressively loyal to those that she became close with. In Paul's letter, specifically in Romans, at the end of Romans 16, you see him say hi to about 30 different people. There's a whole list of all the people that I have it somewhere. Yeah, there's a whole list of everyone. There's like a guy named Rufus, which is not a name you should ever have. A lot of people that he's saying hi to. Obviously, Paul felt it was very important to surround himself with good friends, especially in the job that he had. And these are all good things to consider, but as I was looking into this and as I was kind of reading through this, the same passage kept coming up over and over again, and that's John 15. And keep in mind, this is Jesus, the Last Supper. He says this just after he washes his disciples' feet. He says this just after he tells Peter he'll deny him 3 times. He says this just after he dismisses Judas to go betray him. Even after those things, he says this, "This is my commandment, love each other the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." If we're going to follow anyone's guidance on what it means to be a good friend, it's God who all throughout the Bible gives us a perfect example. And a big reason why Jesus might be an example of friendship is because he's sinless. Because sin is inherently antisocial. Like, think about it. Like, if you go back to Genesis again, we see the man and the woman, they eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and suddenly they felt shame. So they hid. When we know we've done something to a friend we know will upset them, our instinct is to avoid them. We avoid the places they hang out. If we happen to be in the same room, we'll avoid eye contact with them. Sin separates us from each other. And then God called them out and asked what was going on, and we see the man blame the woman for what has happened. Back in college, I was watching a Ducks game in my dorm room, and they were losing badly, which lately isn't weird. But at one point, my roommate Luke, who I consider still today to be one of my best friends, he told me that he actually avoided me when I was watching hockey and they were losing, because my mood would change and I'd actually get more irritated and short with people when my hockey team was losing, which is a great attitude to have. But sin causes strife between people. Then lastly, they became aware of their own mortality. Their sin introduced the idea of death into their lives. And ultimately, when someone in our lives passes away, that relationship essentially passes on with them. In 1996, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, they won the NBA championship, and the clock ran down, the stadium erupted, everyone cheered. It was a good old time in Chicago. But Jordan, however, what he did is he grabbed the ball, he laid face down in the court, and after a few moments, he slowly got up and he walked into the locker room and laid on the ground again, and he was clutching the ball and he was weeping. It was Father's Day, and it was the first championship he had won since his dad, whom he called his best friend, had passed away. In an interview several minutes later, he explained his emotion. He said, "This is for Daddy." Of all the accomplishments in basketball, Michael Jordan affirmed that this was the pinnacle of his career because it represented his father. It was a wonderful moment, but his happiness hit a ceiling. His joy surged, but it was not full because he couldn't share it with his best friend. Because of sin, we have death, and death causes relationships to end. Sin is antisocial. It separates us. It causes strife. It causes relationships to end. And today, the sin in our lives can make it hard for us to be friends with each other. For us, it could look a few different ways. There's a sin of busyness. There's a lot of us, myself included, where we look at our schedule and we say that we just don't have time for friends. We don't have time to meet up with people. And while it's true that some of us might actually be too busy to have relationships, it doesn't mean that we should be. John Mark Comer, he wrote this book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry just recently, and he outlined something that's called hurry sickness. Hurry sickness is defined as a behavior pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiousness. When we're anxious and rushing, we don't see the fruit of the Spirit in our lives. When we're rushing, we're not loving, we're not joyful, we're not peaceful or patient. Or what are we? We're rude, we're sarcastic, we're pushy, we're easily irritated. And again, I know a lot of us in this room, we have a lot on our plate, and a lot of those things are good things. But if we continue to fill up our lives of things that are robbing us of connecting with Jesus and with each other in a meaningful way, we need to seriously consider letting some of these things go. I had a mentor of mine, I was complaining to him that I was so full of other things in my life that I didn't have time for what I was passionate for. And so he told me to write out the top 5 things in my life that I value. So I wrote them all down. And then he told me to go write out a typical week of what my week looked like. And so I wrote out what a typical week of mine looked like. And I found that I actually had a lot of time for the things I valued. I just filled up my life with just garbage that I didn't actually care about. I actually had lots of time to do the things that I wanted to do. It wasn't certain things that were getting in the way. It was like Netflix and hockey games. Like that was what was actually getting in the way. The sin of busyness can get in the way of meaningful friendship. There's also the sin of idolatry of technology. And I know that we've heard a million times that we need to get off our phones, but we really do need to recognize that this thing isn't for you. I have a friend who he and his wife, they're planting a church out in Calgary. He was at Youthquake this last weekend. He was giving a session on anxiety, talking a little bit about it. And in it, he was sharing about this biological theory. It came from the 1800s. It was called biophilia. Biophilia is the love of living systems and the belief that all humans possess a built-in love for landscapes and nature. And when we lack these things in our lives, there's a high level of stress that builds up. So the more we find ourselves doing this and not connecting with God's creation around us, it builds up an increased amount of anxiety and depression in our lives. And the more we get addicted to our phone buzzing and us retreating in those kind of ways, it draws us away from people. And because of that, we get even more increasingly anxious and depressed. And those are 2 things God doesn't want for you. A couple of years ago, I got an Apple Watch because I thought it would help with that. I thought, yeah, if I just got this thing on my wrist, I got a phone literally attached to my arm, that would help somehow. I thought if I got like a text, I could just like quickly glance at my wrist and I could just get on with my day. But I actually found what was actually happening is I'd like have a conversation with somebody and I would get a buzz on my wrist and I would look and they would like stop talking until I like regained eye contact with them. It actually didn't help, and I would try to have like some quiet time with like my Bible, or I was reading a book and I would like purposely put my phone in another room in my house and so I could like focus up, but my wrist would still go off and I wouldn't check it, but there's still like a thing in my back of my head like wondering what it was and who and what was happening. So I got rid of my Apple Watch. I got rid of it this week. I have a dumb watch coming in the mail this week now. There's nothing wrong with owning these devices, and if you have a smartwatch, I don't want you to feel guilty for having it. But they do a lot of great things, but we need to really reclaim them working for us rather than us working for them. The more we let them control our lives, the more disconnected we can be from people, and this increases the sense of loneliness that so many of us already struggle with. There's also the sin of impatience. More than any time in history, we're seeing the increased urbanization of our culture. There's more people than ever who are wanting to move to larger centers, getting away from farms, getting away from smaller towns, wanting to be in cities. And there's nothing wrong with moving away from home. If that's the case, then I shouldn't be here right now. But that's our desire to go elsewhere can make us unwilling to put in deep relational roots with those that we have friendships with now. If you're a teenager in this room, you've probably seen this picture before already, but this is me and my friend Matt at our friendiversary from last year. Every year at March, we celebrate what we call our friendiversary. This is the month we became friends, and we have a big party that we make an ice cream cake, and on the cake, there's last year's friendiversary printed on. And on that cake, in that picture, there's last year's from then on that one as well. It's a ongoing tradition we have every March. We just put the plans in place for next month. I'm very excited for it all. But it's a great time that we do this all together. And we were college together for 3 years, and that was easy. We saw each other every day. But now I'm here in Morden, and he's living in Medicine Hat, Alberta. And so we have this increased distance that we have here. And if we didn't have this yearly tradition, it would be very likely that at this point in our lives, where we're so far apart, we are doing different things, that we would just kind of lose contact with each other. We need to have patience and presence with the people to let these friendships grow. So we have a good idea what we shouldn't be doing to make good friends. We shouldn't be too busy for them. We should limit our tech use or just be really smart about it. We need to give time to let those relationships grow. But when we see Jesus tell his disciples to love each other the same way he's loved us, what does that look like? What does Jesus do to make him the best kind of friend we can have? And before we get into this, there's probably a few of us maybe here who have an issue with calling Jesus maybe a friend, and maybe that's a bit weird. Like, it would be understandably weird if Jesus showed up in this room and I was like, hey, bud, like that would be like a weird way to greet him. But the friendship he extends for us doesn't diminish the authority he has over our lives. Jesus does exist as our Savior and our coming King, but those aren't minimized by the relationship he desires to have with us. So through Jesus' life, we see 5 elements that make Jesus the greatest friend. The first, that he loves us very deeply. Most of us know John 3:16, 17. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not come to the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. We all are pretty familiar with that phrase, but a lot of us, when we ask the question, what does God think of me? It might sound weird to say, it might sound weird to say how God feels about us, but God likes us. Like God, he likes us being close to him, and he's sad when we're far from him. When I told my parents at 16 I wanted to move away to a different high school 6 hours away, they had a hard time agreeing to that because it was a whole thing. They liked having me around, and they didn't like the idea that if something were to happen to me, they couldn't be there for me immediately. Not only does he love us now, but he will always love us. Quite literally, Jesus loves us to death. This stems all the way back from when we were first created and called very good. The whole Bible tells stories of God's people being close with him and then falling away and then coming back and then falling away again. In this whole struggle, God remains with his people and his love doesn't end. Jeremiah 31:3, it says, I have loved you, my people, with everlasting love. With unfailing love, I have drawn you to myself. Third is that he's transparent with us. During the Last Supper, he tells them that he is the way, the truth, and the life to the Father. He tells them that he can send his Holy Spirit as an advocate. He tells them that he is the vine and they are the branches and how to produce good fruit. Jesus gives his disciples, he gives his friends, everything they need to know about him to be close to him. Verse 15 in John 15, Jesus says, now you are my friends since I have told you everything the Father has told me. He wanted to be in a relationship with his friends, so he made himself as accessible as possible. He didn't want to hold any secrets back. Fourth thing is that he feels what you feel. There was a summer I was at camp when I was a little kid, and our cabin leader, I was at Bible camp, and he said, if you guys can memorize any verse and recite it to me, I will give you a chocolate bar. So a kid in my cabin, Ever the hard worker, he marched up right to his cabin leader and went, John 11:35, Jesus wept. And that's a verse. Like that's what he did. And yeah, it's like a short verse, but in this time in John's gospel, Jesus' friend Lazarus has died and he's around his grieving friends and family. And just like a good friend cries with us when we're feeling hurt, Jesus not only understands our pain, but is present with us during it. How much time do I have left, by the way? Oh, crap. Okay. All of you who thought it was going to be short, anyway, last thing, number 5, Jesus is the best friend because he speaks truth directly. Out of all these elements, this is probably the least fun. Proverbs 27, verse 5 and 6, Solomon writes, an open rebuke is better than hidden love. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from the enemy. If you're a people pleaser like me, this is very difficult to deal with because I want everyone to like me all the time. A bunch of us pastors were out at a district retreat a few weeks ago, and there was a little bit of free time. I was trying to catch up on some emails and some work stuff. Junior high was happening for the first time without me, and so I wanted to make sure that things were going to be okay while I was gone. And there was a pastor who I never met in my life walk up to me and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing work right now. You should have time for rest. And it was like, I don't know who you are. Also, outwardly, I was polite, but I have do I care what he said? No, I didn't care. Like, was he right? Probably. Did I care? Absolutely not. Like, this guy didn't have any trust built in my life. I felt like I had zero reason to listen to him, even though he was telling me good things that I should probably hear. That compared to Luke, my college roommate I mentioned before. He came back from the library one night to find me watching TV, eating chips. And after the day before, we talked about having more healthy lifestyle things. And so he was like, hey, is this your second or third bag of Doritos today? And I was like, that hurt. It's actually my fourth. But we had this trust built where we felt like, okay, we were calling each other on things. Jesus wants to be a sincere friend to us, and sometimes that means hearing things we don't want to hear. Jesus is a great friend because he loves us deeply. He'll never stop loving us. He's transparent. He understands our hurt, and he speaks honestly into our lives. Just like he said in John 15, Jesus went on to be the greatest friend, and ultimately he did that by laying his life down for us. So if you're somebody who, like me, who heard all these stats and was at the beginning and felt sad that there are so many people who felt that way, a good step you could do is just invite people out to do things. Henry said at the beginning of the morning, there's a million things going on in the church this week, and so you can invite them to all of those things. We have Shrove Tuesday, there's pancakes. Everyone likes pancakes. If you don't like pancakes, we're not friends. We have Ash Wednesday service. You can go online right now and sign yourself up and a friend for 72-hour prayer. Or next Sunday evening, you can bring them up to worship night. You don't have to bring them as like a way to like convert them or something. This is just something that we can do together, and you're gonna come anyway, and it's just better if we experience those things with people we like. Or you're someone who directly identifies with those feelings of loneliness. You're one of those 1 in 5 people. And if that's you, this might sound I don't know, not very nice, but just go make a friend. How did Jesus make friends? He walked up to someone on a boat and was like, hey, we're hanging out now. And Peter just like waddled off the boat. He's like, I guess we're hanging out now. Like that was kind of how he made friends. You don't have to be ashamed for wanting friends. You're literally created for it. Whenever you find, whatever you find your social life to be at, if you continue to focus on strengthening your relationship with Jesus, opportunities for healthy, Christ-filled relationships will start to present themselves. They won't just happen. Every relationship takes work to grow. But if we become more like Jesus, our friendships will start to look that way too. It's going to take some sacrifice. It'll take changing your schedule up a bit. It'll take taking away maybe some of your comforts you have. It'll take some time in order for roots to grow. It will take laying your life down. But with that, we need to understand we can't do it all. The average person can hold 150 meaningful friendships in their life. Of those 150, only 50 of them could be actual close friends. Of those 50, only 15 could be really good friends. Of those 15, only 5 can actually be best or intimate friends. Your lane can only hold so many cars, basically. It's okay to have acquaintances. God created you for a certain capacity for friendships, and you shouldn't have to apologize for how God created you. Maybe you're looking at this whole thing as far as what friends are, and you think of a few friends that are in your life that maybe lack these certain areas or are very severely lacking in these areas. And I don't want to say that we should be cutting off relationships with each other, but maybe there's a conversation with them about what they're doing, or maybe some boundaries need to be put up in order for you to continue having a solid relationship with these people. We become best friends when we follow the perfect example of friendship. I'm going to invite the band back up finally. And if we're able to do this, if all of us could identify whether we're needed to create more friendships with people or let people further into our left lane, we need to focus down and build some deeper friendships. Or maybe we need to evaluate some friendships or either fix what's broken or replace them. If we're able to do this, we'll be a church that experiences joy greater than we do now. J.C. Kyle, he's an author, he wrote that friendships halve our troubles and double our joys. We don't have to carry the weight of our world alone, and celebrating is that much sweeter when we have someone to share it with. If we as MAC become a place known for being the best kind of friends to each other, we'll have a church that looks a lot like Jesus. Let's sing together. Friendship is something that we can do better right now. Like Cookie Monster said at the beginning, friendship is someone who we can share cookies with. So out in the foyer right now, a friend to a lot of us, Alvina Penner, made cookies for all of us to share with each other. We can find someone you know really well, you can give it to them, or find someone you don't know and hand it to them and hang out a little bit. We can start practicing this right now. As always, we also have our prayer team in the front. Please don't rush out of here if you need to. Grab a cookie, stay a while with friends. Have a great week. We'll see you later.